This
fail.
conference will now be recorded.
And so I left my corporate job, started working with a professor from Pratt who had a wearable tech startup. I thought it was really cool, loved the speed of everything, loved the startup culture, but I still kept running into that problem of like, I kind of want to work for myself and I want to see what this whole founder startup world is like from me controlling it. So I quit. I started freelancing. I ended up partnering up with my now fiance, then boyfriend. His name's Manny. He walked past me before. We were freelancing together, and that's when I started 3D printing because we needed to. We took on product design and development clients, and we needed to get things done fast. And I needed to multitask because we were a two-person team. And so I sent things to the printer, a local shop, while I continued on with like presentations, renderings, yada, 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 other things that I needed to do at the time. Cut to a year later, we were really good friends with the owner, and he was applying for his visa. I think he was on a student visa. It was a really small shop. It was run by him and his wife, and they had 2 little kids. And they didn't get their visa accepted, so they decided to, instead of trying again, they decided to move to China around their family with 2 young kids. Having the grandparents around helping with the kids isn't such a bad thing. And so he asked us on a Sunday night via text message to me if we would take over the company. And so that's how I got into MakeLab. And that was in January of 2017. And then we were operating the company called 3D Uniprint by April. So before that, I had never operated a machine. So I had 2 half days of training with the owner. And he was like, yeah, so you do this, and then that's it. And this is kind of like how you talk to customers, you know, there you go. I was like, oh, okay. So a few months later, we rebranded to MakeLab, and we've just been growing the business ever since. We learned a lot of business things. We almost failed because our eyes were too big, and we had to pivot because we bit off more than we could chew, and we had to make really tough and like quick decisions in 2018. And but we're still here, we're growing, and we're going for a seed round. And then in 2018, when we were still in the flubbering phase, as I like to call it, that's when I had met Nora at Rapid down in Dallas, I believe it was that year. And I was like, huh, can we like do this, but like in New York? And then so I emailed her right when I got home, or maybe even while I was still in Texas. And then that's how the New York chapter started. And definitely flubbed. Everything I do for the first time, I mean, it's a human thing, you kind of flub a little bit. So we didn't have many people, but then I just kept putting the word out there, and I just kept trying to be as organic as possible in these happy hours, and I tried to really cultivate organic friendships rather than, you know, thinking of this just as sales. And that's when the New York chapter started growing and growing and growing. And so now we have like a rotation of like 20, 25 people coming out, and they're usually all repeats, which is really cool. And it's given me a lot of opportunities, not just to make friends in the industry, because none of my friends know what the hell 3D printing was, or, you know, startup life to begin with. And a lot of people in this industry, you don't go to school for this. So it's not like you kind of just land here. You have to carve your own path to get into this industry. So that's something that we had in common with my new friends. And a few months later, I saw an opportunity to do more long form. So I started a event series called A Conversation With, where I had one main guest, I guess you can call it, and I took her on stage, and we kind of did like a fireside chat. We themed it, we got sponsors, we got catering, we got a photographer, videographer, like the whole shebang. I had like people doing interviews in the back for content and whatnot. I had 4 other lightning speakers that gave 15 minutes each. And I was planning my 3rd one when COVID hit. And around the same time, I had gotten a lot of traction from that. Our first event had, I think, 250 RSVPs. And then the second one had, I think, 175. At the second one, I had changed to paid. so that the event could support itself. And so that had attracted quite a bit of attention from Nora and other board members, and they invited me to apply when they had an open seat. And so I applied. At first, I thought I was way too young. I was like, you know what, I'm new to this. I'm new to, you know, running a business in general. Like, why would you want me on the board? And I got a little nudge from someone saying you should really apply, cut that imposter syndrome crap out and just do it. And so I did it, and I got elected, I guess is the word. I got chosen. So we've just been meet quarterly, like a board does, and we just try to advance the organization. And so, you know, the goal of Women in 3D Printing is to promote, inspire, and support women in this industry, because we make up 12 to 13% or less, and we want to change that. So, and we think we can do it in an organic way. And if you guys went to the Type conference, a lot of the feedback that I got when I was just like asking, like, you know, hey, how do you feel about this conference? You know, all these virtual conferences are happening. A lot of people found that it was super organic. And I think that's like the one common thread amongst like all these global chapters in Women in 3D Printing, is that it's super organic. And that's just, I don't know, you can't plan that, you can't design that, it just happens. And so I'm really happy to be part of it.
Thank you, Christina. So what are your goals for the New York chapter, you know, once going towards the lift of COVID lockdown?
Yeah, so I started up the virtuals via Remo. I started that, I think, last month, and yesterday we had our second ever virtual. Next month is probably going to be virtual, but I'm going to see how May goes. But I'm going to see if we can do like an in real life outdoor, just because in New York things are opening back up. We're at 50% capacity as of tomorrow for indoor dining, and the weather is nice. So we'll see what happens. I just have to play it by ear. Can't really plan too much, but eventually I'm trying to get it back to where it was and do the next conversation with.
Yeah, we're seeing kind of the same here. And so how did being a part of Women in 3D Printing have a positive impact on the work that you do with MakeLab?
Being, aside from the title, just the community was very validating, and sometimes it can be pretty lonely here. And so just feeling like you have a friend that's maybe not doing exactly what you're doing, but you know, kind of what you're doing, helps a lot. And it really helps you excel and push past like what you think you know and challenge yourself. They always say, like, I've always been a big believer in community as part of business. And I think that's a trend that's picking up amongst other businesses these days. Every business talks about community. And it sounds corny, but I don't know, once you find your tribe, there's like nothing like it. You're kind of like, you can do anything. And it's, I've noticed that the people that I laugh to the point of like cry with at these happy hours are the people that I will most likely refer for an opportunity and pass the bag, so to speak, just because I thought of them. And it's so natural and like organic. And it's not like, I don't know. I used to think networking was like icky, you know, but this makes it not.
Yeah.
I would agree with that in terms of the organization, and I think also that you know, because I spent most of my career in fields with mostly men, and I like that Women in 3D Printing wants men to be participants. You know, we want men to be part of our group so that they can support, because often men are in the positions where they can give a you know, a hand up to a woman, whether it's an employee or a vendor, and I think that's a really great thing. Does anybody have a question for Christina, either about MakeLab or about Women in 3D Printing?
Not really.
Do you want to talk for 1 minute about what you guys are doing with mentoring young women about career pathways to 3D printing? I don't know if that's far enough along to talk about.
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So well, one thing that is unique about Make Lab, I would say that I don't think I intended, I didn't go into this like thinking I only want a specific type of person to apply to Make Lab, but I think I don't know the exact percentage. I think it's like 95 or 97% diverse and like 1/3 female, which is so cool. I think that's like just so incredible. And it happened totally again by happenstance. I think like myself, I'm Chinese, I'm a woman. My co-founder is Dominican, and you don't see that a lot, I realized. Once I started like looking around at all these events, I was like, oh, okay. You know, hi. But so we just try. Right now, we are a startup, so our resources are limited, but we do have like a pretty great internship program. So anyone we take in, we pretty much try to nurture whatever interests they have, whatever talent they have, and like we try to be super flexible and really treat them like part of the team rather than just like an intern. And what I find is a lot of people that come out of it get a lot out of it and want to come back. And I have to say no because I'm like, you can't stay an intern. I don't want to take advantage, you know what I mean? But that's one thing we do. And then in terms of our employees, we are a small company, but we have started like a beta like mentorship program with one of our advisors, which is pretty cool. So they meet bi-weekly and just talk about pretty much everything. A lot of the soft skills, because you know, in a startup, you tend to have like, well, our employees are younger, they're coming out of college. There's a lot of things to learn. So we try to nurture that as much as possible.
Cool. So at BevLab Hub here in Santa Fe, we have had a paid internship program with Santa Fe Community College for a while. But I was really fortunate. I was giving a talk at the Consumer Electronics Show, and I met the head of apprenticeships for IBM, and she helped us push through a U.S. Department of Labor registered apprenticeship for an additive manufacturing technician. And the big difference between an apprenticeship and an internship is an apprenticeship is really a pathway. It's not someone coming in that may or may not stay. An apprenticeship is really intended that the person stays with the company, and there are set U.S. Department of Labor guidelines. So our framework, it's very structured. Our framework, and I'm happy to share it if anybody would like it, was developed based upon the framework that America Makes developed with Youngstown State University and the Urban Institute. And then what I just did is took the framework, and for the educational component, we plugged in our digital badges, and but it's a very structured program. And Alec, who's on the call, is one of our current apprentices who started on March 1st, and Hank, who's on the call, is our lab manager now, but he started as an intern when he was doing an associate's degree at the college. And I think those pathways, IBM told me that registered apprenticeships realize over a 94% retention rate in employees. And
wow.
That's the intent. Yeah, I know. And as an employer, you know, I mean, having people who stay and work with you is really key. And so right now we have 3 apprentices, Alec and Jed, who are in the lab right now, and MK, who was on the call. I don't think she is right now.
I'm here. I'm on the phone.
Oh, you're
I'm
on the
listening
phone.
via the phone. Yes, I am. I'm listening via the dial-up connection.
It's often easier on the phone. Here in New Mexico with bad broadband. But MK is a former PBS producer and has taken some of our badge classes and is going to be moving into the apprenticeship program. But I had such an urgent need for help and she's jumped in to help me with a whole bunch of projects. So it's really wonderful to tap into, and the Congress, and I don't know if it's passed the Senate, but it's passed the House, has put in a new apprenticeship act to expand apprenticeship programs. And I think a lot of you know that my lab is connected to MIT, so they asked us to write a policy paper for the Biden administration, and my feeling is that it's all great to have apprenticeships, but we want them to be in the jobs that are coming. We don't want them to be for steel workers or for coal miners. We want them to be in additive, and we want them to be in fields that people can actually get jobs. You know, not the dying jobs, but the coming, what IBM calls the new collar jobs. And so I'm happy to share, you know, that information. But that's interesting, Christina, that you talk about the internships, and the internships and the apprenticeships are great pathways, because workforce is a big key element in being adopted across So I thought, you know, people always do these horribly boring, I think, calls where people go around the room and, you know, talk about what they do. And after a while, you've heard the same story over and over. And I thought what we should talk about is, what was the first thing you printed, and how good or bad was it? And you know, just a few sentences. I mean, you don't have to, it doesn't have to be a thesis, but or have you 3D printed yet, and how could we get you started actually printing? And Irina, since for you in Bucharest it's very, very late, we should have you go first because I want to keep you awake.
Don't worry, now I am very awake, so it's no problem. I started 7 years ago. I'm an architect, and my husband is also an architect, but he gave up architecture and he was working in not a fab lab, it was like a workshop. They were doing architecture models. There he started 3D printing, and I told him, why don't we do our own business? By the way, I've never been an employee. I had only startups and my own businesses like this. So I told him, we will do this. We made the website and we bought a small 3D printer from Tier Time. It was up +2, so it was something very small. And we did a great website. Everyone thought we had a factory, but we had only that small 3D printer. And we started in an apartment. We had a room in the center of Bucharest, and that was the beginning. And year after year, we had to change the place we were working. Now we have like 13 3D printers, 1 laser cutter. We have no employees anymore because we couldn't find someone to work for us. So we have this problem. And if they want to work for us, they don't have experience, but they ask for very high salaries. So we have to train them and pay them very well. Most of the equipments were bought with money from the government. I took different funding. For example, they were giving money for startups, and to complete my workshop, I made a new company, 3D printing ceramics. So I bought new printers that were printing plastic and ceramic. I have from United States, from Netherlands. I bought from Italy. I have a Delta Wasp, big one, in the office. So the first thing I printed was something from my mini factory, I think. It was a very small airplane engine.
Very cool.
I tried to make a makerspace, and I lost like 65,000 euro, which here are a lot of money.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah. Here salaries are like between 500 euro and 1,000 euro, big salaries. Of course, not for IT, where they go up to 4,000, 5,000. But there were a lot of money. I lost half were my money and half were the money of a friend, because here people are not ready for something so, I don't know, just 3D printing, it's too much. So we lost and we had to just become smaller again.
But that sounds like an interesting thing that you made.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we just grew constantly from one year to another. Now we are working with museums. Most of our partners are working with government funds. We chose the ones that know how to take these funds, because I'm not very good. So they pay us. We had only 2 weeks of break when COVID started. And I got scared. I thought we will fail and we will have to close everything, but it wasn't like that.
And
I
here
started, yeah.
And here you are still after that. So what material was your airplane part? What your engine? What material did you make it from?
I think PLA. We didn't have much then. It was very small printer, and I don't think it could print with ABS. I don't remember. Now we don't have any professional 3D printers like 3D Systems, or I don't know. We had one from 3D Systems, and it was the worst printer I have ever had. It broke like after we used it 2 times, and all the people we knew with 3D printing studios had one broken printer from 3D Systems. So we gave up. We didn't think it's worth to invest in my country in expensive equipment, because no one is asking for it. So we have printers from Time, we have Zortrax, we have the Wasp from Italy, we have 3D Potter, we have, I don't know, I lost FlashForge, 2 of them. We have a lot of printers.
Well, that's a great intro to your path of where you are today. So who else wants to share? Do you remember what was your first print and how did you make it and how did it turn out?
I'm calling on Adrian. Adrian, come on. I know you got a good one.
Oh, for my first print? I don't know if it's going to be quite as exciting as you're expecting.
Or a print.
My first what?
Print.
I mean, I can tell you what my first print was. My first print was we had to do little texture squares on FDM printers. So you had to model a texture and then print it and see how it turned out.
But you learned
as far as favorite print, I might have to think on that one. Susan put me on the spot, so now my brain's
totally did.
blanking.
Next, I'm going to put Josh on the spot. Josh, tell us, what's your favorite?
Well, I haven't printed anything personally, but favorite memory of 3D printing. was I actually went to just a high school here in Albuquerque called Bosque School, and they had a little 3D printer. I think it was probably back in 2013. So, technology was getting a lot of attention. It was building a lot. So we were all just kind of in science class, just watching it print. I think it was printing gears to fix itself. So the teacher was just printing the replacement parts of the printer with the printer, which I thought was just so cool. And then
That is cool.
went to college and kind of thought about 3D printing a little bit, and then came for a tour at the company I work at now for an internship, and they showed me one of the big HP multi-jet fusion printers, which I don't know if everyone knows, but it's about 6 feet wide and about 6 feet tall, and it's just massive, and it's unbelievable what it can do. And I said, I didn't even know this was a thing. It blew my mind what from 8 years ago it had turned into now, what people can do with 3D printing. So that's when I kind of said, okay, I guess I'll work here for you guys.
So it doesn't matter necessarily the first print. It's just the feeling you have when you first see it. That's the most important.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I mean, that's my experience. I haven't printed anything yet. They won't let me touch those machines. So
Only Adrian gets to touch them. But
only
I will
Adrian
say-
gets to
touch
touch
it, Josh, if you really wanted to.
Yeah.
There might be some adult supervision, but
Yeah, I don't know.
So Daniel, tell us your 3D printing first print, and I'm going to go last because mine is pretty bad. You're muted. You're muted.
Yeah, I think the very first print I ever did was just like I bought this machine used off of a guy, and when you first load the software, it's like, oh, here's a test print. So it was like a nut and a bolt. So technically that was the first one, and surprisingly it was successful.
They're set
As
up
far as
that
the
way.
first the one that I did, it's hard to remember, but I feel like it was like a door handle for a Jeep or something like that. I was kind of like working with this hot rod place in Albuquerque and doing some design work for them, and that was one of the like real big reasons I got like super stoked on getting this printer. And so yeah, that was one of the things, was like printing this door handle, because we were trying to make a door handle, like a custom door handles for Jeeps and then custom accessories for Jeeps. I'll have to think about that though, what my first print, like actual one is. As far as favorite prints, anything that you can't machine, anything that has like hollow passages, lattices, anything like that, that's my favorite type of printing to do. Generative design stuff.
Cool. That's a lot of fun. I don't know if you all know the company Local Motors. They used to be near us in Cambridge. They've since moved to Arizona, and they have a 3D micro factory where they do a lot of crowdsourcing, and they designed these rally cars that were eventually partially 3D printed, partially machined with Cincinnati, the big machining company, and the Oak Ridge National Lab. And they could design the whole car using crowdsourcing, and people all across the country or all around the world with all kinds of different skills. They could design a door handle for a car, or they could design a whole car in the time it took a Ford engineer to redesign a door handle. And it was a very, very cool way that they merged crowdsourcing and kind of this integrated design process with a large group of people with 3D printing. And the machine that they came up with Cincinnati and Oak Ridge had dual heads, and so it had a 3D printing component, and then it had a CNC component, and the heads would swap in one machine. And somewhere I have a picture of me with that car at a trade show. It went about 30 miles an hour. Yeah, no. But when you say the door handles, you know, it kind of reminded me of local motors and the projects that they do. Natalia, so do you or someone in your group want to talk about kind of what your a story about your first print and or a favorite print?
Do you want to go? No. I'll talk. Hi, my name is Christina Salas. I'm an associate professor at UNM. We've met, yes. I work in the Department of Orthopedics, but I'm an engineer. And I've been printing for about maybe 10 years now. And I think one of my first prints was a model of a pelvis, a little miniature pelvis model. And I'd say what was the other question? It was also what was our favorite print? Is that correct?
Or favorite print, yeah, yeah.
So we do a lot of different types of printing in my various labs in engineering and in orthopedics, and I think my favorite print has been, we do some bioprinting in my tissue engineering lab. So we use additive manufacturing to make scaffolds to grow human tissue. And so one of my favorite prints has been our ability to build our own 3D bioprinter and synthesize bioinks in order to make bone ligament tissue scaffolds. And so our very first one that we made that combined 3D printing with near field electrospinning to be able to make a composite material that was really strong in tension and in compression, that was my favorite print. And this is a
complex problem.
Yeah, it's a pretty complex problem, yeah. And Natalia is a PhD student in biomedical engineering, and she works in my lab, and she's relatively new to 3D printing and a little shy, and has been working with us lately on the this mask making project since the pandemic started. So for about the last year, we've been 3D printing masks for the community.
Cool. That's really great. I have to come visit your lab sometime when we open up. When
absolutely
life goes back to more normal.
Yeah, definitely.
Anybody else want to talk about like a first print and how maybe it got you into 3D printing or a favorite print?
I just want to chime in and say I've gotten to go to Christina's lab and it is sick. That's all.
Cool.
Let's all go to Christina's lab.
Hi. How you got started on 3D printing? Alec?
Sorry, I didn't hear you. I guess I got a story kind of on the opposite end of the spectrum. It like made me think of this first time my dad brought home something that was 3D printed. He taught architecture, but all it was like a little pyramid and like a cube or something. So I was trying to think of how long ago it was, but maybe I was in elementary school or something. And it just like blew my mind that just those little shapes. So it's pretty cool to see how far everything's come since then. Yeah, and it was like, I don't know, so long ago, like wanted to like show it to all my friends and stuff. And then he had to give them back to his work because they were super important, you know, they're just geometric shapes. So yeah, just made me think of that story.
Cool. Andrea?
Hi, this is Andrea. I just wanted to say hello. I work for HP. I'm in sales. I'm located in Rio Rancho, and I've worked with Susan before in the West Wind team, and I just want to say hello, and it's nice to be here. It's great to hear all these stories. I myself have not printed anything, but I've been with HP for 20 years and could not wait to get on a 3D team as soon as we announced, and I was able to do so. So it's been just really exciting and fascinating, and it's just great hearing everybody's stories. And I just want to see how we can all just keep up the communication and networking and sharing of best practices, as well as, you know, information about startups, and because we all have the same passion, no matter our roles, or we wouldn't be here, I would think. So I just want to say hello, and it's nice to meet you all.
Oh, it's great to meet you, but we can change that. We can get you printing. It's not that hard. All the salespeople tell you that, right? Shelley?
Well, we do have 3 salespeople, well, 2 salespeople and my manager that have their own printers also. So,
yeah.
Of course, we're not in the office right now, so they can't bring in little examples for me to see. But
Oh, Shelley, you want to talk a little bit about your first experience with 3D printing and what you printed? Are you still there, Shelley?
I think she said she's just talking over text based on what she said in chat.
Oh, yeah, I wasn't chatting. We might, oh, here we go. Yeah, it's really hard living in a world where broadband is not 100%. And when you're in a place like New York or other parts of the country, you can't appreciate what we deal with in New Mexico. Hank, do you want to talk about your first print?
Sure, I'd love to. So my first exposure to 3D printing was meeting Sarah. I took her design for 3D printing class that she was offering through the continuing education program at the community college. I wasn't very aware of 3D printing before that, but a family friend of mine introduced me to Sarah. And so I ended up taking her class. And it didn't work very well, but I was trying to do sort of like a Helmholtz resonator, which is just basically a hollow sphere with a cone on the end with an open tip. And you're supposed to be able to hold it up to your ear and hear a note resonating. It didn't really resonate because it was printed in PLA and not brass or whatever they're made out of. But it was still a lot of fun. And you know, I've been working for Sarah for coming up on 3 years now, and so I've gotten quite a bit better since then. But in terms of my favorite print, one of the ones I'm most proud of is just this. It's a simple little vase that was actually featured in the Santa Fe Home Show the other year. So it's based on a Klein bottle. So it's got a little hole in the top for flowers and whatnot.
It's so clean.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, thank you.
It's really beautiful, and it's one that I use a lot as an example of design. And of course, now Hank teaches the design for 3D printing class. So the class has evolved quite a lot. Anybody else? And when everybody who wants to talk about their experience is done, I'll tell mine.
I might go forward here. Only this is MK, and I just have to say I learned about 3D printing or stereolithography about 20 years ago when I was trying to start my own business. And one of the things I was trying to do was create an alternative doll to Barbie, both Barbie and G.I. Joe. And and that's when I began to learn about this. But I didn't quite have the money to pay for somebody to engineer it, and it all just seemed so kind of sci-fi and way out of my budget. And so then I was introduced to Sarah through my former job as a radio host, and I interviewed her because I saw her picture on the cover of one of a magazine, and I thought, wow, that looks interesting. And then read more about her and thought, what is this all about? So of course then I learned about the New Collar Network and the New Collar Jobs and what this is all about, and it's just been so exciting to discover that this is all now so accessible to people, and it's still a dream come true for me to create this little action figure, because my dream is to actually teach kids animation, to use my digital skills to help with storytelling with children, and utilize 3D printed. Now this my dream has been updated, I guess you could say, to the idea of creating action figures that could be 3D printed, where the kids could be involved in the design of perhaps the parts, and even if they learn the simplest things of maybe how to create a very, like even a stick figure or something, that somehow they could create ball jointed figure, and eventually get them to learn a little bit of STEM and STEAM, where they could combine their talents and do print out little figures that then they could learn how to animate and learn a little bit of digital media technology while they're at it. So just this idea of being able to print something is so exciting. So the first time I got to sit down and take my class and learning Tinkercad and still finding my way, and then quickly into Fusion 360, and still a little intimidated by that process, but it was just so exciting to think, oh my God, I'm actually going to print a figure that I spent hours in sculpting by hand, but now I could just easily print, and it didn't work too. It wasn't too bad. I mean, it had its flaws. I had to print it. I just started with one simple joint, but just the fact that I could do it was so exciting. I was like, oh my God, this is a 20-year dream come true. And so just the accessibility of this technology and what it's going to do for manufacturing and creativity it just blows my mind. And now, of course, finding out everything that all of you are doing, and it's just the sky's the limit, and it's so exciting to be a part of this on the front lines of cutting edge technology. And so everything from prosthetics to, as you say, you're doing bioprinting and at UNM. It's just wow. I feel like I hit the jackpot. So it's really exciting to be a part of this whole venture and this community. So thank you all for hearing me out and allowing me to be a part of it.
Well, MK has just brought so much to us, and we had applied for, and I can send you guys a link because it's still open to vote. We had applied for this FedEx small business contest award, and which was $50,000, and you had to make this little video, and MK made this video that would have taken me like 10 years, and in an afternoon, she knocks out this gorgeous video that tells our story, and she was just using existing footage that we had, actually footage from Mary, the New Mexico Tech Council video that you guys made of my lab, and of photos that I had, and it's so great to work with MK and to have someone who can help us elevate kind of the accessibility and the information about 3D printing. So we're going to start a podcast, not just about 3D printing, I mean, pretty much about the possibilities that I think exist with all of these new technologies for the American Dream 2.0 and bringing us to a whole new place. So it's really a thrill to work with MK, who is just she and I have gotten so much done. She started March 1st, and we've gotten so much done. I just can't believe it. And Hank knows I always say that I need to be cloned, and now I feel like I've been cloned. So I'm really thankful that MK is with us. So my story of my first print is that in 86 or 89 or somewhere between there, I had read this paper by Chuck Hall about 3D printing, about stereolithography using a Ti-Sapphire laser, and I thought, well, I think you get better results if you 3D printed with UV. And I owned a company that built ultraviolet lasers, excimer lasers at 193 nanometers. And I thought, well, this should work. And so I called Chuck and got like all his instructions of, got all his papers. Well, I already read all his papers, but got all the, the detail, because that there isn't always in every technical paper all the detail you need. And I talked to Chuck, and I was so excited that I was going to be 3D printing, which was not called that then. It was just called stereolithography. And my excimer laser had such high fluence, which is the energy density of the light going into the resin, that I set the resin on fire, which is pretty unusual. But most resin printers don't catch fire. I think that what has so I never 3D printed anything because I had turned everything on fire, and I really think that what has enabled stereolithography along with metal 3D printing is the advent of solid state lasers. And because we now have solid state lasers that are really able to, of course, not have gas. I mean, both Ti-Sapphire, his original lasers were all gas lasers. My laser was a fluorine-based gas, so we all know what fluorine is like. And I think really the laser technology advancing to the state that it is today has really changed the game for making the printers reliable and, of course, safer. They're not catching fire, but also making the laser, the systems more accessible to more mainstream markets. And my favorite print are my cube earrings, which you could do any other way. You don't need to 3D print a shape like this. But because I was able to play with the wall thickness, they're translucent, and this is how people know me. And I can tell somebody at a trade show across, 4 football fields, look for the woman with the cube, 3D printed green earrings, and they always find me. So I think, did we get another caller? So who's on caller 3?
That might be me. Can you hear me?
I can.
This is Shelley. I've tried multiple ways, but I'm still sticking with it here. So my story isn't so much about what I've printed. It's more about the thousands of kids I've been able to print things. And so about 3 years ago, Sandia National Labs, I coach a robotics team and have a STEM business where kids teach kids. And once a year, Sandia National Labs, we go onto base and they teach the kids in my program something new. And so 3 years ago, the students assembled and learned how to use 3D printers. And then we took that knowledge and started teaching kids at our camps, and we would then teach quite a few kids before COVID. And when COVID struck, we went online and started teaching kids online how to assemble and use 3D printers. I have a long-standing relationship with DSS SolidWorks, and I've done the same thing with SolidWorks. So we have kids teaching kids, and for both SolidWorks CAD and 3D printing. We have an online community on Discord where kids get together, share print ideas, troubleshoot, help one another, and we run challenges for them. And so that's my story, that I'm trying to spread the amazingness of additive manufacturing. I do know how to push the buttons and run a print, and our students did, along with many of you. My students were able to print about and deliver about 6,000 face shields during the height of COVID here. But I'm definitely interested in really developing. I just got a contract with Albuquerque Public Schools, and we will be developing a pathway from even elementary all the way up through training, post-high school graduation, to fill that workforce pipeline in additive manufacturing. So I'm excited to meet you all and would love to hear more about some of the internship opportunities. I have some amazing students that have some great knowledge already, and I'm sure they could learn more from all of you. But yeah, that's kind of a little bit about. And I think one of our favorite prints as an organization is something that the students called George. It's something they found on Tinkercad. It has a man head and a frog body, and we laugh about it all the time. So
that's very cool. Shelley, I'm working on a series of digital badges with America Makes for middle schoolers. So they've taken our high school and adult badges and broken them down into more manageable chunks for middle schoolers. And America Makes brought in an amazing e-learning organization that has developed an animation teaching module with a little 8th grade girl named Aaliyah, who is this little black girl who is so adorable. And Hank's worked a lot on this with us, and we are doing the pilots in 6 of our MIT Fab Labs in the next couple weeks. The project ends, I think, in May or so, and then I'm developing IBM and Youngstown State, and I are doing a pre-apprenticeship to our registered apprenticeship. So, you know, the micro badges are a great pathway to the digital badges, and those pathways into education where a degree isn't really necessary. And Mara's joined us, and MatterHackers bundles our badges with their machines. So, Shelley, you and I can talk offline about that, but I really see that pathway of how this can, you know, progress from you know, elementary school up through a job. And I think our registered are really an important part of that. So I have 2 things that I would like to propose for and kind of growing this group. I really like talking to all my peers, and I really like talking to the people that all 3D print, but I'd also like to bring in more people who don't know anything about 3D printing. And I mean, most of our group here are either vendors or academics, or we're companies that are in manufacturing that use, so we're either users of 3D printing, producers of 3D printing, or on the academic side. And I'd really like to bring in people who have no idea what we do, and who are thinking, well, God, what the heck is that 3D printing stuff? And that's like science fiction, you know, that's what they do. That's what they do in fancy manufacturing. That's not what we do, you know, in hospitals, or that's not what we do in Walmart. And that is all changing. Those tools, so whether it's 3D printing or robotics or AI or VR, all of that stuff is coming into the mainstream. And I'd really like to see us have a more interactive group, so we're not talking to each other about all the time, because we're all preaching to the choir. But I'd really like to have us really have more outreach. And so the two things that I would like to propose that Fab Lab Hub can do, and the New Color Network, is we have our digital badge program, and I can issue a badge for anything, for any achievement. And so what we're going to do is create a badge for anybody who attends a meeting. So you all get a digital badge for coming today. And yes. and then you can, and we're creating a new website on our, it's always hard to launch something. And we've got a new website where we'll have a community and people can share their badges. If you're looking for a job, or you are applying for school or for a scholarship, you can point to it, and an employer can look at it and see all the badges you have. They're typically project-based, but this one, of course, won't be. You'll just get it for attending. You don't have to do a project, which my group knows is a big job when we do a project. But if we can, so every time somebody comes, they'll get a badge. So we can encourage people to come, and come not just hang out and have a social hour and meet fun, interesting people and make great networking connections, but also have some tangible thing that they can show for it. And then the second thing is that I want to have a challenge for next month's meeting. And my challenge is that I want everybody attending to go out and find people who aren't in the 3D printing space. So they're not vendors, they're not contract manufacturers, they're not using printers, and they're not selling printers, but they are actually new to 3D printing. They don't know what it is. They maybe own a factory and need to add new technology, or maybe they're a high school teacher, or maybe they're a doctor in a hospital who's curious about bioprinting. We were talking about bioprinting earlier. And the person who comes back next time with the most guest, I will send a copy of our augmented reality book. And so, which happens to be behind me, it's my prop. So this book has augmented reality links, and it's the stories of the people who work in industries like 3D printing. And I saw that Maita just joined us, and Maita is a dear, dear friend of ours in Santa Fe, and also a client of ours. And Maita is in this book, and she designs jewelry, and she designs in CAD. So here's her ring, the Taos ring, which I'm not wearing today, but I do often. And then we 3D print the molds, and you can see that the purple mold is then cast in sterling. And so the book is a coffee table book, and at the beginning of that chapter, there is an AR link, and you use your phone, and a video pops up, and Maita tells her story about how she uses 3D printing in her jewelry business. And so the person who brings back the most new people who don't work in 3D printing, they have to be outside of 3D printing, will get, I'll ship out one of our books to you. And so it's an $80 book. So there's some motivation there, and it's way fun. I think, Mary, have you seen the AR?
I have. I'm absolutely fascinated by the AR. Yes, it's amazing.
And even people who said to me, "Oh yeah, I know what AR is," and then the video pops up, and somebody's talking to you on your phone is really cool. So that's my idea of how we could get more people interested in 3D printing, and more companies starting to integrate 3D printing more workplaces, so whether it's hospitals or factories or agriculture, and try to get more people learning about it. And so I was thinking we could put together, I can have MK do it, who is such a whiz at media. We could do a little slideshow about what is 3D printing and kind of everything you've always wanted to know. So what other ideas do we, and then before we go tonight, I want Maita to tell her story because she is one of our favorite 3D printing people. But I want to start with those two ideas and see if we can leverage that. But if you have other ideas, in terms of getting us launched in New Mexico, either let me know now or drop me an email, and we can see if we can do some fun stuff. I know Mara's going to have ideas, and so we'll talk on the phone. Alex?
Sorry, I was just waving at Christina.
Well, let's start with those two ideas, and so you all have an assignment for next time. And Maita, can you hear us? I think you're on mute. I'm gonna text her. She's also in Santa Fe, so. Can
you hear me now?
I can hear you. How are you?
Very good, thank you.
Can you tell us like a 3-minute overview of your 3D printing journey?
Well, I started creating jewelry. I'm a jewelry and have been on it, doing jewelry about 15 years already. So what turned me into 3D printing, it's the necessity of doing pieces faster and more complicated stuff like graduation rings, pieces that needed certain designs, and just start researching how was it possible to do, and it turned me to 3D printing. It was starting to research and find more and more. Gotta learn some stuff because I'm almost 50 years old. Okay, so I don't know how to use a computer. So you have to understand it was tough, but it is possible.
Yes.
And it really helps.
And here is the ring that I showed the pictures of, and this is the Taos Pueblo. And I get so many compliments when I wear this ring. But Maita is an excellent example of how by us making the molds, we're saving her time instead of having to make the molds by hand. And she's able to then to spend more of her time on marketing and sales, and also helping her husband, who has the casting business. And so she's just a great example of how to implement this technology in a real substantive way. And I'm really glad that you had a chance to see us. Any other ideas of things that you'd like to see us do?
So Sarah, Lenny, I just have two comments, right? I guess I'm the first. I'm not a 3D guy. I'm just here. No, I would admit I did work for a big manufacturer, and I'm tied to another to a partner. But Mary sent out a message, and Deborah, and said, Lenny, you know, I'm associated with a different piece of the console, but I just want to hear, because when I was, you know, years ago, I remember when 3D was kind of taking off and where I was. And you're right, I used to run the demo center, and I remember to put the 3D printer in, and I said, what is that? And boy, things have changed since then. So so as the regular guy, you were so nice. You should have said, not dumb, but people that don't know much about 3D, but you were saying bring someone in who's green. So I'm the green guy today, folks, and I learned so much from everyone. I loved all the stories. The young lady from like another country, and her and her husband, and continue to do what you're doing. All the stories of different teachers. It was really good. So here I am. I'm telling you, whoever comes on not knowing anything about 3D, they're going to get a lot from your sessions. I just want to start off by saying that. And the other thing I found out, and I think everyone's going to love this, you're going to agree. So what I found out about Sarah, no, I heard a lot of great things about her, but apparently when Jose Feliciano came up with the song, Come On Baby Light My Fire, Sarah was the one who gave him inspiration when she was burning her resins. No, only joking, but anyway, glad to be here.
It's so great. So I hope you come back. I hope you come back next month. And it's it's such a great field, and I mean, I'm really a laser girl, and I love lasers, but I think that, you know, the future is 3D printing.
No, on a serious note, and you did say, if, for example, if I know I'm here, I know a lot of people, and so if I find that person you mentioned, even if I'm not here, I'll mention, hey, this would be a thing to join just to learn, like you said, someone that's like another green person. So I'll try to keep that in mind. Thank you again.
Thanks so much, Vivek. I'm so glad you made it, but we're just winding down. Hello.
He's winding down too.
He's,
Vivek, wake up, man.
Well, we have, oh, his sound isn't coming in, huh? Technology is not perfect. I have a question, Vivek. Do we have the 7 o'clock 3D drunk call tonight? Put it in the chat, because I can't remember. Well, thanks for the kind words, Lenny. I just find women in 3D printing to be a really inclusive group, and to really support the industry and what people can do. And so you all have your assignments for next time, which is to sign up new people who are curious about 3D printing. I'd like to add, maybe not for next time, but for the time after, maybe bringing a high school or college student with you, and trying to get more people. But I think that we need to not just all talk to each other and not preach to the choir. I think we need to spread the word to people who could benefit from what we do. Any other ideas of things you'd like to see the chapter do? Hopefully someday we'll have an in-person meeting like the Colorado people and could have t-shirts.
Yeah, maybe we could create 3D print a little keychain or something, or
wait a minute.
That would represent us.
Yeah.
So Adrian's gone and Josh is gone, but she designed this for Roadrunner. It's a keychain.
Oh, that's so cute.
And it spins.
Does it spin?
Yeah, it spins in the middle. So this is printed on a Jet Fusion 580 from HP, but she's extraordinarily creative. So if you would like some, I certainly can talk to her about it.
That would be very fun. We did some keychains that Hank designed with Arjun, who was our previous lab manager, of a logo that was spinning, or was able to spin. And it gets a lot of attention, you know, and then you tell people it's 3D printed. and that really catches them. That would be a wonderful present when we meet in person. I don't know when that will be.
Maybe if they come to the meeting, they get one or something to that effect.
Yeah.
Actually,
everyone gets a little token.
To invite all of you when we actually can be in person. Westwind is based in Albuquerque, and we have printers, sell printers, and as well as have an additive manufacturing shop, and we'd love to host one of the meetings there and invite all of you when we can be live again. And Arena, I'm expecting you to fly over.
I'm thinking it would be like September. I would think by September easily we'd be able to have small groups. I mean, in Santa Fe, we're down to the single digits now. Anything else before we sign off? But I think those are all good ideas and so nice to share. And I'm really gratified that Lenny learned from us, and because that's the real power of it. It's not talking to each other, it's talking to other people. And so thank you so much for joining us.
And I did, and I wanted to, the young man Hank, the student, now he's, beyond that, he's moved up. That was really, that was good to hear. And then Daniel, I don't know you, Daniel, you kind of jumped on, I guess you're local, and I think that was cool too, because did you know Daniel before this, Sarah? Because he jumped on. I thought, so this was really, like, it was educational for me. Thank you again for everyone,
Good.
Yeah.
Well, come back and see us.
I will. I'm going to try to come back with another, like I say, I got to find another Lenny. Maybe I can find a twin out there somewhere. Someone else dumb like I am. I can find somebody.
That sounds great. And if there's nothing else, I guess we'll say goodnight.
Thanks for organizing this, Sarah.
Thank you, Sarah.
My pleasure. Good night.
Sounds good. We'll see you guys.
Great night.
Night.
Bye-bye.